Okay, so family members of a person with PTSD may experience the following. They can experience sympathy, so they feel sympathetic towards that person. They have negative feelings or avoidance. Depression is a big common factor because the person feels so bad about their family member with PTSD. Some will experience anger or guilt, and some will even experience health problems.
And that's the family members, Asher?
Yes, the family members of a person with PTSD.
Wow. People think that PTSD is directly correlated to like being in the army or some really big event that takes place, but it can also happen with even events or accumulating events such as bullying or some sort of community violence. And many people who are at risk are children, especially children living in kind of inner city poor areas. And a lot of kids happen to be non-white, so they're of a minority. And also alcohol or drug abuse and being in a gang can definitely affect whether or not you may be diagnosed with PTSD some point in your life. And also, I mean, there's the really obvious effects can be domestic violence. So if you have abusive parents or siblings or whatever, that can definitely cause it. And males also see a lot more violence than females, so they many times are at higher risk of having
They're more
prone to PTSD. Yeah, and females are more at risk of sexual assault. So though males are more violent and they're more prone to that, women who a lot of sexual violence is directed towards can also, that's a big PTSD risk factor.
Yeah, because I do remember that they were saying that a lot of women who were raped.
Who was saying?
Mr. Hartquist. They do tend to experience PTSD because of those traumatic events that happened.
Yeah.
Like the Vietnam War, for example.
Exactly. So a lot of people think that children and teens, a lot of people think that children will not have PTSD if something happens when they're too young, although it can almost be in their subconscious, and like even babies can develop PTSD, so people need to be really aware of that. And for example, some babies and toddlers, they can develop mental illnesses or mental problems. Not saying that PTSD is a mental illness, although it definitely is a deficiency. And babies can get that even if there's, let's say, a lot of yelling or maybe violence towards others within the home. So it's really important not to have little kids, just not to introduce that to them whatsoever. Not to introduce that to anyone, but don't think that a baby or a little child won't remember, because they will, and it can affect them their entire life. Anyone can have PTSD from any sort of thing. And again, it is really important to remember that it doesn't have to be one large-scale event that can cause it. It can be accumulating events such as, bullying at school. Even if it's really minor things, and sexual abuse, and, even if it was a guy who, slapped someone's butt a lot, or just did the little things like that, it's an example. If that happens to somebody, if that happens a lot, a girl can almost have PTSD and, somewhat limit her, or, close out men entirely.
Yeah.
So it's a really serious thing.
So be careful.
Be careful. Watch what you do, because it can affect people for the rest of their life. Well, honestly, it's a really serious thing, and everyone is at risk.
When a child has PTSD, it can affect family and friends quite a bit, because I think it's mostly because a kid so young in their life having PTSD, it's really sad for a kid that, the ages range obviously, but just so young in their lives and already having to deal with that kind of a problem, it just, hurts people around them because they don't like to see someone go through that. So, I mean, I think it can affect family and friends quite a bit, especially if it's a child that has PTSD.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's painful for anyone to have to, especially when it's a loved one. Right. So whether it's a family member or a friend, it's already difficult enough when you see somebody going, through a hard time, because you love them. But when it's something as severe as PTSD, which is life-changing, it can be one of the toughest things. And I think that it definitely, PTSD, when one person suffers, it's kind of everyone suffering.
Yeah.
And so when it is, a child especially, that's something that you can't use. I don't know. I just find it something really, you can't describe something like that. That would be really difficult for everyone, because that person is growing, and when their brain's still growing and their bodies are growing and they're they haven't been experienced to so many life lessons and just so many things. If they are going under if they have something as severe as PTSD going on, that can really, I mean, just imagine what they go through later in life when they have something holding them down.
Yeah.
Like PTSD, I don't know, that's just, watching somebody being completely held down, and it's, a really unfair thing that people experience on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much how it affects family and friends. It affects everyone, not just that one person. And it's hard to be around somebody when they are suffering from something, because even, it depends on what they're
suffering from.
Yeah, exactly. So if it was, for example, war, if there's, sudden earthquake maybe, or perhaps, some sort of loud noise, or, honks of horns, or, I mean, it could vary with anything, and how severe the case is, but it can be really difficult, being around someone or just doing something, that seems rather average Joe. But if it's really severe, it can be hard to do that, and it's hard, it would take a toll on any sort of relationship. So everyone is affected, and it's a difficult thing for everyone. Would you agree, Ashley?
I agree, very much so.
Okay. Our project is on PTSD.
And how it affects family and friends.
And this is by Coco Woods
and Ashley Laurie.